and welcome. Thank you for coming today to the Careers in Writing event for this semester featuring Sherrie, Fernandez, Williams. Before we get started, we're going to have Melissa from the Career Center give you a little bit of information about career services and what's offered here at Anoka Ramsey.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. I'm actually a student here as well, but I also work in career services with Krista Hayes. And what we do in career services is we help you guys with your resumes. Especially if you're looking at going into something that is directed maybe towards creative writing. We're really good at helping people make your resume specific towards what your goal is. And then we also help you find jobs. So if you are currently looking in any type of area, we have lots and lots of jobs on the job board, and we can find you other things through other accesses as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to come on in or go to the information desk, and they can set up appointments to go over your resume.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is Careers in Writing featuring Sherrie Fernandez Williams. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of Sherrie's bio before we start with some questions. Sherrie Fernandez Williams earned her MFA in Writing from Hamline University. She is the author of Soft, a memoir, a beautiful book, which you should get right away, and a recipient of the Artist Initiative Award through the Minnesota State Arts Board, a Beyond the Pure Fellowship, and an SASE Jerome Grant through Intermedia Arts. She was a Loft Mentor Series winner for creative nonfiction, a Jones Commission Award winner through the Playwright Center, and was selected for the Givens Black Writers Collaborative Retreat. Her poems and essays have been published in literary journals including Aquifer, the Florida Review, where she received the Meek Poetry Award, Subtlety, and Segue, among others. New poems are forthcoming in Black Lesbian Collectives, Serendipity, and Wrath-Bearing Tree. Her essays about writing and identity can be found in the Poverty and Education Reader and How Dare We Write. Fernandez Williams discovered her need for words in Brooklyn, New York, where she was born and raised, but she grew up as a writer in the Twin Cities. She's currently at work on a collection of poems. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, to get us started, could you tell me a little bit about how you developed an interest in writing? Did you always feel like you were a writer?
Right. First, thank you for having me. So good to talk with students, one of my favorite things to do. I worked in higher education for about 17 years, and so it's like coming home whenever I get a chance to talk to students. And I did work in career development for 6 of those years. I highly recommend that you talk with your career services folks. They will help you, believe me. So they put their heart and soul into those resumes, and it does make a difference. So thank you. Say yes to that. Okay, to the question. I always use that line. Pablo Neruda wrote a poem called Poetry, and he said, "Poetry arrived in search of me." And that when I saw that line, I was like, that makes sense. That's kind of what happened. Because I was so very young when I started writing, I was just asked one day, my teacher wrote the word composition on the chalkboard and said, we will be writing a composition. I never even heard the word before. I didn't know what it was. But basically she said, write about whatever you want. And I don't think she was feeling well that day. Like I remember her turning the lights off and like popping aspirin and drinking tap soda. It was the 70s, so tap soda. And she was just kind of like, don't bother me, kids. Like just write something. And that's what had happened. I was like, started writing. I had no idea what I wanted to write about, and just started. And then I just went on and on and on and on. And I was an extremely shy kid. Still am. A shy middle-aged woman, but I was a very, very shy kid. And so all of these thoughts just started pouring out of me. And I remember, it felt like it was going on forever because it was time to, like the bell rang, it was time to go to lunch. And I asked my teacher, can I please just finish writing? And she said, okay. So I missed lunch, and then there was recess, and I was still writing, and the kids were coming in the classroom, and I'm still writing. I'm just like going to town, and then we had to move on. And my teacher just kind of like had to pry the papers from my hands because like, okay, Sherrie, it's time, we need to move on. But I always say, like, I never moved on. I just kept going from there. So that's kind of how the discovery happened, but I didn't know it was there, and that moment helped me to recognize that there was something there that I didn't know was there.
Fantastic. So you got your MFA at Hamline
Mhm.
University, and would you talk a little bit about, were there particular courses or instructors who were really helpful for you in finding your voice and
Yeah.
determining your path?
Sure. Patricia Weaver Francisco, you've had her?
Yeah.
Okay, so she was teaching the personal essay class. So this semester, I had kind of a magical semester. I was in a personal essay class, and I was also in a playwriting class. And both of those things seemed to work together so well because personal essay to me felt like a long monologue that I was writing. And so I found that there was something similar in the voice and the style. So writing characters who said whatever they wanted to say, and much more bold than I am. I found that my essay voice, that some of that was coming out in my personal narrative. Also what happened kind of at that time, my life was in transition. I was in the process of going through the adoption process and thinking about becoming a mother. At the same time, my mother was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so all of this kind of like big life stuff was happening to me. I was losing my mother, and I was wanting to become a mother, and there was this moment of, how am I going to do this without my mother? And like everything, whenever I have a problem, and writers usually would share this idea that when there's a problem or something I'm trying to figure out, I have to go to a page to try to understand or try to find the answers. And so I was trying to find the answers on how in the world am I going to become a parent and become a mother. I was the youngest of 8, which means that I had a whole bunch of parents. I knew how to be parented. I didn't know how to parent. And anyway, so I was like, well, maybe if I write through my fears, some answers will come to me. And that became really the beginning and the basis of my thesis, which actually then became my first book. I mean, it changed drastically because life continued to change, but so it started with the personal essay class, me trying to process motherhood, which kind of really steered the rest of my path through the MFA program and then writing after.
So it sounds like one of my questions was about, you write in different genres, and do you find that challenging to kind of move in between the genres, prose and poetry? But it sounds like at times they work really well for you.
Yeah, prose so creative nonfiction and poetry, they work extremely well together because it's all about the voice, and it's all about kind of the images and the way words sound, as you hear them, rhythm, so I think in creative nonfiction and essays, you find all of those elements, those poetic elements. The difference between poetry and prose for me is getting right to the essence of it. So cutting out as much unnecessary language to get to the essence. And that's a challenge for me when I'm been focused in writing prose and using as many words as I need to say whatever it is I need to say, to cutting down and paring it down to just the very, very, very essence. And that's where the power and the meat is. So that's my training when I shift to poetry, is like just a lot of cutting and a lot of, is this the exact right word?
And does that then influence your
and it
prose
does
as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. So a lot of writers in the room, right, are beginning writers, and they might be starting to send their work out for publication. Often that is a long, drawn-out process filled with a lot of rejection. And so excerpts of your memoir were published separately in literary journals and anthologies before the publication of your book. So could you tell us a little bit about your experiences sending out work for publication?
Okay. So this was right after I completed my MFA, so right after graduation. So what's the next step? Okay, I need to start publishing. And so this was back in the olden days, before electronic submission, where you do everything, you know, snail mail. And so I would go and print, you know, usually 25 to 50 copies of whatever it is I want to send. I would do my research, either, you know, Poets and Writers, Writers Chronicle, or there were online resources that would just have like lists, just go on forever, of possible journals you could submit your work to. And I would just painstakingly go through, what is the due date for this? Put it, I had my own calendar just for submissions. And so I would plug everything into my calendar, you know. And then, depending on, you know, a group of deadlines, let's say, you know, there's a bunch of deadlines coming up in May, so I'm going to submit to all of those places. And it was, you know, self-addressed stamp envelope. You know, I would just sit and just write all of those out, stick them in, and, you know, take it to the post office, drop it off. Anyway, so that I had a very methodical approach to doing that. But your question really is about
well, about
the rejection?
Rejection.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
right.
it's part of the game.
Yeah,
Do you have
it
any
is.
advice for?
Yeah. Just okay. So this is what I was getting at. Those envelopes start coming back, you know, and more often than not, it was rejection. And so I had my box, and I would keep them, because it was a way to gauge, am I doing the work? Because rejection is just a natural part of the process. So I wouldn't just rip it up and throw it away. I'd keep them, as to say, okay, yeah, I'm making progress. I'm getting a stack. That means I'm getting closer to finding the journal who wants this essay. And so I think it was something I had to adjust to as a new writer, just getting work out. But once I made the adjustment, I was fine. And I just knew this is part of the process. It's finding the right journal for the right piece at the right time. Because sometimes the journal, they may even like your piece, but they are not focusing on that particular area that your story or your poem is dealing with. So, you know, they'll sometimes say, you know, we enjoyed this, but it's not right for us at this point in time. Please submit again, or, you know, that sort of thing. I'm horrible at getting back. I'm horrible at circling around like, okay, they said I should submit again, so let me make sure. I'm horrible at that. But I would recommend that you do that. If they say submit again, something else. And understand what is it that they want at this particular point in time. So when you're going through so many journals, it's hard to like, okay, is this, and, you know, their descriptions, you're like, I think my piece has something to do with environment, or what, you know, whatever. Anyway.
So then, how long would you say it took you to get this book published with North Star Press? And had you sent it out to a lot of other people?
Yeah.
Did they accept it during an open submission window?
Yeah. So remember how I mentioned how I'm bad at circling back around? So I did send it. I didn't send it to a ton of people. Actually, way less than what is recommended. I may have sent it to 10. Not. I should have sent it to more, but one of the presses was Grable, and they got back to me with a very nice letter. And at the time, my book was very chronological, and that's not my normal style. All of the revisions that I had to do, I ended up taking a book that was kind of ebbs and flows and goes back into time and not chronological at all. And all of the revisions I ended up doing, somehow the book became very chronological, and I don't really know how that happened, but that's what happened. But I sent it to Grey Wolf, and the CNF editor said, you know, we love your voice. You have a really strong voice, but the book is chronological, and I don't like chronological stories for memoir. So submit again. So basically she was saying, go back, rewrite it, and then send it back to me. Well, I went back, rewrote it, and didn't send it back to her. Because my friend and mentor said, North Star, they're acquiring manuscripts right now, so you should send it. So I sent it, thinking, oh, it'll be like everyone else, like, I won't hear from them, blah, blah, whatever. And I heard from them pretty quickly. So instead of taking the manuscript and sending it back to, oh, by the way, I did the mixed, chronology like you suggested, here it is, I didn't do that. I just said, okay, you want to publish my book? Sure. I mean, that's what I did.
Did you have thoughts about that? Would you?
Every once in a while, I was like, why did I do that? There's so many things I've done. Where I just go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? But this is what I've decided to do. To accept if they're mistakes, accept my mistakes. Because for some reason, that's the way I have to learn. Like, I have to learn things the hard way. But at the same time, it's like we're not going to make all the right decisions all of the time. So you don't know what the right decision is. Who knows? You don't know. So you have to do something. You have to take a step forward. And maybe that's the right step. I don't really think, as long as your intention is good, like your intention is about your future, your dreams, your goal, and that's what you're focused on, I don't know if you can really make a wrong step. It's a step, and that step is going to teach you something. So I think I've decided to stop, beating myself up. Why didn't I do this and why didn't I do that? Because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't know what I know now. And so I guess I don't have a lot of regrets, but I think initially I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have, at least send it to her and see what she had to say. But I didn't. And I have a book.
Yes.
And I'm making some decisions. Another piece of advice someone gave me is don't think of your first book as the only book you'll ever write. So with every book, you learn something. You learn something about writing, you learn something about yourself as a writer, and you learn something about the industry. I'll write another book, and I'll send it to Grey Wolf, and I'll send it to, I'll send it to agents, I'll send it, I'll do those things, because whatever I lacked in confidence however many years ago, I've gained, we grow over time and we learn things and we do become more confident in our ability. And I guess maybe less afraid. I'm not afraid of no. I'm not. You cannot really be a writer and be afraid of no.
That's great advice. So you've had this wonderful career as a writer, but you've also had all kinds of jobs within kind of the writing world, and this is careers in writing. So if you could talk a little bit about your career trajectory beyond your own writing. You've had jobs at the Loft Literary Center, for example, now the Minnesota State Arts Board. You talk about how you started and where you went, and maybe give some advice to our guests here about how they might get their foot in the door with a job.
Okay. So I would say that if you have a passion for something, immerse yourself in it. And I think sometimes we are because of fear, we may choose more practical, what we consider maybe more practical paths. Before applying for the MFA program, I was going to start a master's in communication, and I was going to go into advertising, and I was going to, have a stable, financially, rewarding career and all those kinds of things. And I just had the hardest time even filling out the application. Like, I was working at a university that had a master's in communication program. The director of the program and I had a great working relationship, and she kept, every time she'd see me, I went to the application, and apply, and I'm going to do it, I'm working on it. And, I was just not motivated to do it. And so a friend of mine, she popped in my office, and we were just chatting, and she actually did graduate a master's in communication, and she was doing marketing and communications. And I just said, I just want to write stories, and I just want to, write novels and be a creative writer, and maybe that's what's slowing me down. And she said, well, you should apply for the MFA program at Hamlin. And this was years ago, and it was newer. And I said, oh, Hamlin has an MFA program? Because it was just down the road. I didn't know that. So I called them, and then I scheduled myself to attend an information session. Went to the information session, got that application done like probably in 2 days, and sent it off, and was accepted. And I take the longest time to get to the question.
That's part of the path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So this is the moral of my story. I thought this path would lead me to a stable and lucrative career, and but I wasn't passionate about it. And if you're not passionate about it, it's hard to have the energy and focus to put your all into it. So that was not the path. I chose the path of my passion, and it did lead me to wonderful jobs, including, I would say, my job at Hamlin. I used to teach a vocational discovery class. It was find your passion, find your vocation. And I taught that class for 6 years, and I loved it. I taught 100 students every semester, and it was because I had my own passion, and I believed in it so much that I wanted students to find their passion, something that they can be excited about, and jump in head first. And so I would say my MFA led me to that job. And then from there, I was still writing, and then I ended up at the Love Literary Center because a position opened up, and the skills were transferable. I could see that. So I threw my hat in the ring and got the job. And I loved it at the Loft. There were a lot of nights and weekends, and so it was such a beautiful experience to be with writers every day, all day, work in the mentor series, and get to sit in those very rich discussions about craft and the writing life, and be so heavily, just so. It was such a time of bliss, for me. But at the same time, because I had to work a lot of nights and weekends, I struggled to find time to write. So I was like, maybe I need a 9 to 5. Maybe that's what I need to do. And so position at the Arts Board came up, and that's also wonderful because I'm, again, working with artists all day, helping folks draft their proposals and give advice and things like that. So all of these experiences, there were transferable skills I used in each of those, and all of them came from following my own bliss, really, and being passionate about that and encouraging other people to do the same.
So So in addition to following your list, which I think is fantastic advice, what kind of skills did most of those jobs call for,
Yes.
and how would you recommend our students get those skills?
Great, thank you. Communication skills, being able to build your community. That's another word for networking. I would say that it's important to be in the spaces where you want to be, where you see yourself being for the rest of your life. So as a writer, you should go to readings, you should volunteer when you can, if you can, do internships like at some of the presses in town, or the Loft, or there's a bunch of places where you could spend your summer getting connected and learning about the field, and showing up and being fully present. Because when you do that, people take notice, and you're able to build relationships, and people will look out for you, and people will advocate for you. So the job that I got at the Loft, I didn't actually know about. I called to schedule a reading, and the person who was in the position at the time said she was leaving, and then she said, "You should apply for this job." And I said, "Okay, maybe I will." I mean, I had at first I was like, I hemmed and hawed, and then, after hanging out, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna apply for this job. So I think it's about kind of immersing yourself in the community that you would like to be, and being fully present and connecting with people. And as I mentioned, I've always been a really shy person, and I still am to this day. But I also love people. So being able to talk with people, advise people, be a resource to people. So even as a student, you can be a resource to others. So it's not just others being a resource to you, but you can be a resource to others, your teachers, other people in the community, making other people aware of opportunities that you found out about. Those are the kinds of things that will put you on people's lists as a person that they would share information with, and recommend you for opportunities and things like that. So I say if you are a helpful citizen in whatever communities you belong to, people will help you as well. So in terms of the types of skills, I do a fair amount of writing, but I also do quite a bit I provide a lot of feedback on other people's proposals. So because I've had an opportunity to write proposals and receive grants and have served on panels, and I kind of know what panelists are often looking for and things like that in terms of proposals, I'm able to provide some feedback that's often helpful to others. And so that I use those skills. Advising is another one that I've used throughout my career. Before Hamlin, I started my life in higher education and admissions, and then I was in academic advising and eventually career development. So all of those things somehow connected to this world. The only difference is it's focused in the arts. So I would say it's important to build those interpersonal skills, writing skills, communication skills, being a resource to others, showing up when there's an event and you don't have to go if you don't want to. It's good to go, and it's good to be that person who does, oh, I've seen this person here quite a bit. This person often shows up. It pays off kind of in the long run. And even though your intention may not be oh, I need to be seen, and that doesn't necessarily have to be your intention, but what you're doing is you're just immersing yourself in the activities that feed you. And you are showing up for others, and you're showing up for yourself. And people take notice.
And do you think it was helpful, like for both the Loft,
Mhm.
you were a mentee, you won the Loft
Yeah.
Mentor Series at one
Mhm.
point, and
Yes.
then eventually you ran it.
Right.
You also
Mhm.
received a Minnesota State
Yes.
Arts Board Artist Initiative grant,
Mhm.
and now
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
help with that as well.
Program officer, yep. Yes, absolutely. And that's basically, I think, and yeah, I think I have this thing where if I learn something, I want to teach it to others. Like that's just like I don't know, maybe just teacher mentality or something, I don't know. But yeah, because I had the opportunity to, write a proposal myself and receive an award, and then after serve as a panelist a couple times, I felt like I understood that position pretty well, and so I could speak to it from a place of experience. And the same with the mentor series. Being in the mentor series myself, it was so easy for me to walk into that position, and I know I didn't even really need to be trained. Like I needed to know the system that we use. But because I went through the program myself, I kind of understood the mission and what the purpose and all that sort of thing. And then I was able to put my own, I felt like my own stamp a little bit on the program based on things that I was passionate about and interested in. And so, yeah, so it's good. That's what, again, immersing yourself in the community, participating in the activities that feed you, it does lead to careers. It really does.
So now you're a program officer with the Minnesota State Arts Board grant, and you deal with the Artist Initiative grants. So in case we have people here who don't know what the Artist Initiative grants are, you just kind of give a little overview of that.
Okay, so you have these brochures, and it lists all of the grants that we have available. And the first one is the Artist Initiative Grant, and this is the grant for individual artists to develop themselves. It's really pretty much the grant that's most dedicated to individual artists developing themselves as artists. I would say the growth has two parts. One part is possibly to grow in your artistic practice. So developing yourself to become, a stronger writer or learning new skills. And then the other piece has to do with gaining visibility as an artist. So everyone is required to have some sort of community engagement. So you can curate a reading or teach a workshop to other writers, or have a panel discussion that's dealing with maybe, there might be like a focus to your discussion. Like for example, there was someone who did a discussion with all queer writers who was writing YA. And so she had, several writers who were queer writers who were all writing YA. She held a panel discussion, and also everyone read a little bit of what they were working on. So what that does is, people show up, and then people get to know you, and right there you're gaining visibility for yourself and for your work. You may have a book at that point that you're selling, or you may have a book in progress, but what you're doing at that point is you're already developing your audience. So when your book is ready, there are already people who, oh yeah, I heard her read from that book, and I really, I want to buy it because now she piqued my curiosity. So it's about gaining visibility for yourself as a writer, providing arts experiences for Minnesotans, and developing, skills, whether it's your career professional skills or your artistic skills. So that is what the Artist Initiative Grant is about. And we do have ongoing deadlines, and I wonder if I could pass around a sign-in sheet. So if you are interested in getting on our mailing list, you'll know when a deadline is coming. So even if you're not ready now, one day, a year from now, 2 years from now, who knows when, that day will come when you're ready to apply for a grant, and oh yeah, you know when it's happening because you just got an email about it. So you'll get our newsletter with all of our upcoming deadlines.
And so now all the grant things that you have to turn in, all the parts are online, so it's fairly easy that way. But can you talk about what are the different parts of the Artist Initiative Grant that people would need to be prepared to turn in for this?
So there are multiple parts. So the proposal itself has 3 parts. So, we provide text boxes, 3 text boxes for you to include the following information, or for you to address the following criteria: your artistic background, and something about you as an artist and what you've been able to do as an artist. The second section deals with the merit and feasibility of the plan. So this is the actual, these are your outcomes. This is what you're hoping to achieve as a result of doing this project. These are the actions you're going to take in order to achieve these outcomes. These are the barriers that are standing in my way and why I need funding. Here's my timeline. It includes your timeline. So the actual steps that you're going to take and when you will take them. And finally, the third box is about the impact that your work will have on the state and or creative community. So that piece, again, is about your community engagement, what kind of community engagement you're going to have. Is there a particular target audience for your work? And how will you reach those people? You can talk about your marketing plan, things like that. And then also the impact that your work will have on, let's say, readers as well as writers. So our audience would be readers. So what impact are you anticipating your work will have on readers? And that's where you get to talk about who you are as a writer, the kind of work you're doing, and how it will reach people, touch people, change people, challenge people, whatever it is that you're hoping to do with your work.
So what would you say is a good example maybe of a recent application that was submitted by someone who didn't have a full book-length publication, but maybe they were working on a book of poetry or a novel or a memoir or something?
And that's the most common application, people who have work in progress. And on occasion we'll have people who, I've got a finished book and now I just need help marketing the book. So I would say, I want to answer that question, but I also want to say, along with the narrative that you have to write, you also need to submit an artistic resume. And then some people make the mistake of submitting their, kind of like their professional resume outside of the arts, because they think, oh, well, I've had all this job experience, so I'm going to include all that. And really what we're looking for is your artistic resume. And this would include, it can include like creative writing classes you've taken, if you've had a mentorship opportunity with another writer, if you've apprenticed in some way, maybe literary type internships and things like that you've had. But your artistic resume should focus on your arts experience. And then also writing samples. That's the other piece of the application. So you would need to submit up to 10 pages of work. So if you're a poet, 10 pages of poetry. If you're a prose writer, 10 pages of prose. If you have a strong piece that's 8 pages, submit that. And you don't feel like you have to submit 2 pages of something else just to get to 10. So really, we don't have a minimum, but we do have a maximum. But if you can submit the maximum number of pages, that's a good thing. But don't weaken the quality to get to 10 pages, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to make sure. got the other application pieces. Now I'm going to go back to your question about, tell me again, Paige, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I need to.
Okay.
Did I just ask? Oh, an example?
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay. So, you know, sometimes people will want to do interesting kinds of things that's kind of outside the norm. So, for example, there's a poet who's collaborating with a musician, and they're working on a performance together that includes classical music and poetry. But this poet's goal was to actually complete her collection of poems. So in literary arts, that is, like I mentioned, a really common request. I need time to write. I need to go away. You can use the funds to travel within the state of Minnesota. You can't use the funds to travel outside of Minnesota. Let's see. So it's often, so for literary arts, what we often see in terms of the writing project is about finishing a book, revising a book, or getting a book in the hands of agents, or I have a book, now I just need to market the book. So those are you know, generally the types of projects people are wanting to do in literary arts. And then for the community component, we've seen a variety of things. Like I mentioned, it was Molly Beth Griffin last year who did the queer YA writers. We've had, there's a series now at the law called More Than a Single Story. It started with a panel of African-American women writers. Now it has morphed into, so it's panel discussions along with readings, and now the series involves diversity of all kinds, dealing with kind of like big issues that we're dealing with in society. So we're having discussions, they're having discussions, I don't pick up the law anymore, they're having discussions about that, and then they're sharing their work. Let's see, other literary.
So maybe if we talk a little bit about the grant range you can receive, you
Yeah.
can ask for $2,000 to $10,000. So how what do people commonly spend that money on, and how do they justify
Sure.
being given that money to use?
Commonly, people will ask for money for time to write. So they'll say, some will say, I'm going to take some time off work, and I'm going to take time off work without a salary. And these funds will replace my salary so that I can still live and feed myself and house myself or my children or what have you. People have used funds to hire a mentor. That's also really common in literary arts. People use funds for childcare, to pay for childcare so they can have time to write. Let's see. People use funds to attend conferences and take classes at law. You cannot use the funds to pay for tuition on like credit-bearing classes that you couldn't use for like, it can't go to your tuition dollars under Milton Ramsey, but it can pay for, you know, the novel writing project at the law. It's not a credit-bearing class, but it has the goal of helping people complete their novels. So all of those kinds of things you can use the funds for. People will use funds to, at least some of the funds will go to the community component. So they may need to rent space where they're going to have a literary event. They will often, and we encourage this, to pay the other writers who are going to participate, even if it's a little something, anywhere from $50 to $100, depending on how much, you know, the folks are going to be doing, and then if what they require. And usually in this community, people are, you know, generous with their time in that way. But mhm.
So what would you say are some of the common mistakes that people make when they're filling out a grant
Yeah.
application?
I would say the biggest mistake is not asking for help, because you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes people will make mistakes on their application that if they ran it by a program officer, they would have caught that and said, oh no, this will make your application ineligible if you say this, so don't say this. You know, and we do go through applications to make sure it's eligible, and if there's something that would make the application ineligible, they just get booted out of the contest. So, and it's sad, it's heartbreaking for me, because I hate doing that, but I'm required to do that. So someone will say, and this happens more in the visual arts, capital costs. Like, I'm going to build a ventilation system because I paint at home, and that ventilation, you can't use the state funds for capital costs. You can't use state funds for equipment over $5,000. Another thing, sometimes writers will say, I need the top of the line MacBook, whatever the new, whatever, you know, $3,000 for a computer. That's not against the rules. However, so you'll read the program overview and say, oh, that's not against the rules, I can ask for this. But a panel of your peers will be looking at that, and there are some people who are just like, this person does not need a $3,000 computer. You don't need a $3,000 computer to write. No, you can't convince me. And there may be other people on the panel trying to convince them, and they're just not convinced. So you don't want to do anything like that that's going to cause people to say, why do they need this, or why do they need that? But if you run it by someone, like me, I might say, now why do you need this $3,000 computer? I've had this conversation recently. And they said, okay, I guess maybe I don't need that $3,000 computer. And some people have been awarded funds for a $3,000 computer. But it depends on the makeup of the panel, and I'm just saying there are panelists who just hate that, and they will make a big fuss about it and score negatively. And everyone has their own score. So we're sitting around a room with 8 people. Everyone has their own opinion, and they score accordingly. So, and because I've been a panelist, and last year I sat on 16 panels just in my job, I've gotten a sense of what kind of makes people ruffle certain people's feathers, and so I will alert people to things like that.
Is there any benefit or, I guess, detriment to asking for less than the full 10,000?
I always say ask for as much as you can. You need to make a case for every single dollar, but it's not like, oh, this person is only asked for $5,000, so I'm going to give them a higher score. No one scores that way. They score based on what they say, oh, this is a really strong, cohesive project. This person knows exactly what they want to do. And I think that's what's really important, is knowing what is it that you're hoping to get out of this, and having a really clear idea of what that is, because then that's going to come through really strong and solidly in the proposal. And when it's really cohesive, the community component is somehow connected to the work. And people get really excited about that, panelists, because panelists are writers, and we like cohesion, right?
Yeah.
Like everything fits together, like it makes sense. Like, this is really clear to me. I understand what this person wants. You want them to see what you see, and you want them to feel what you feel. And you're passionate about this. You need to convey that passion, but in a really clear way that they understand exactly what you'll be doing and when you'll be doing it, and who else you're going to involve, and why are you involving those people, and why are you going to have your community component there at that location. And do you know if you can have your community component at that location? Do you have a plan B if that doesn't work out? So those are the kinds of things that panelists will be looking at. And they're also looking to see, is this the right project for this person at this point in time? So we say that emerging artists should have just as good of a chance of getting a grant as well-established artists. And there's sometimes very well-established artists who are even, famous. who may not get a grant because they didn't spend time on their proposal and they're just like, look, I am so-and-so and so, therefore, hey, give me some money. And they don't get the money. And then they're like, what? You know, and it's because they didn't put the time and the effort and the care in the proposal, and because there are other writers sitting around the table and they're feeling kind of insulted, like, why didn't they put the effort into this? And they don't necessarily get the grant. So an emerging writer who's, you know, earnest and sincere and have a clear idea of what their next step is, the next step is you know, feasible and makes sense. So sometimes, you know, if someone says, I have never written a novel, but I'm gonna write a novel this year, and then I'm gonna send it to a publisher, and then I'm gonna get it published. That would not be feasible. That would not be, typically, that would not be a feasible project. But if someone said, I'm an emerging writer, and I'm going to work with this individual because this is what I know about their work, and this is how I think they can help me get to the next level. So figuring out what your next level is, so not jumping 6 steps, but like what is that next step for you? The MRAC, Metropolitan Regional Arts Council, they have a grant called the Next Step Grant. I would recommend that you consider that if you're all in the, you know, in the Twin Cities area. Every single region, so if you're outside of, you know, the metro area, every single region has a regional arts council. So contact your regional arts council. I would often recommend, you know, do that and then do the arts board, or do them at the same time. I mean, you can apply for both. Yeah, you can apply for both, so you should.
And receiving these grants are great things to add to your CV
Yeah.
as you go and apply for
Mhm.
jobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to open it up so that we don't, I could keep asking you questions for a long time, but I want to know what questions you all want for Sherrie, so we're going to use the last few minutes for an open Q&A.
I was just kind of wondering what sort of follow-up you get if you receive a grant.
Mhm.
Does the organization follow up to make sure you're using it properly, or
Yeah,
how do
well-
they keep track of it?
And if you could maybe just kind of repeat the question.
Oh, okay. So you're asking what is the follow-up after you receive a grant? So I will contact people throughout the year to check on their progress, and also to see if they need to make any changes. So after you receive a grant, sometimes things change. You thought you were going to work with this mentor, but this mentor decided they just don't have the time. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And so you need to find someone else. That's when my email usually reminds that individual who's in that situation, oh, by the way, the mentor I had on my application, they're no longer available. I need someone else. And then I'll tell you what the next steps will be for you. So there's, you can amend the contract. You can file an amendment. I'll read the amendment and see if it all makes sense. And if your goals are still the same, the outcomes will still be the same. Most likely I'll say, yeah, okay, we can make that change. Sometimes there's budget changes and things like that people need to make. And so I thought I was going to have to pay for this venue, but now I don't have to, because they said I can have it for free. And I allotted $400, and now what should I do with that money? And then we'll have a conversation, and then I'll say, okay, let's amend the budget, and then you'll file an amendment, I'll read it, and if it makes sense, then I'll approve it. So that's the kind of communication that happens. Sometimes, also, I would ask people, you know, let me know when you're doing something. And if I can get there, I'll try to get there. Of course, there are so many grantees. There are so many grantees. So I can't get to everything, but every once in a while I was like, oh, I'm free that night. I can do that. And it's fun to see people out there doing their work and using those funds, our funds really. I mean, it's state funds, it's taxpayer funds, so it's all of our money. Right? And that's why I always say you should definitely apply, because it's your money anyway. So. Yeah, and then, you know, when I can, I'll try to show up. And then what happens is I will sometimes like, oh, meet a person out there doing their work or something, and then suggest, you may want to be a panelist, next time around, and if you're interested, and that's also kind of communication. I'll sometimes will bug people about sitting on a panel. So if they're not planning on applying that year, I'll say, hey, what do you think about being a panelist?
So do recipients then at the end of the year have to file any paperwork
Yes.
or proof of where
Thank
they
you.
receipts
Yes.
they bought something?
They should hold on to everything. One thing, it's taxable income. And we say that in the contract, but people often miss that because people usually don't even read the contract. You should read it. It's taxable income. So for one thing, you definitely want to save all of your receipts and all of the money that you spend in order to accomplish the project, because then that can be deducted and you pay less taxes on it, that kind of thing. You will have to write a final report, and this is where you show proof that you did acknowledge the arts board. People will send us flyers and pictures that were taken at the event, things like that. And we look for our logo, and we ask for specific language. So if you're going to advertise an event that was sponsored by the arts board, we ask for specific language, and it's written on your contract. And I'll tell people, go to line H, just copy and paste what's in line H. And we tell you which logos you need to use. So funds are coming from different sources. Some will come directly from the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, and some are legacy funds, art sport funds, sometimes all three. And so every contract is different, and so you would use different logos depending on where the source of your funding. Final reports, yeah. So basically, reading final reports, I'm in that process right now. Reading the visual arts final reports just came in, and I'm looking to see, comparing it to what they proposed and what they actually did, and seeing if everything is lining up. And if they're in good standing, then that means they can apply again. And you can apply every other year. So, and there's some people, they may have applied 5 years ago, and they say, oh, I applied, I received a grant 5 years ago. I think, maybe I shouldn't apply because maybe I don't make a strong case because I received a grant already. There are some people, and some, especially in certain art forms, where they apply every other year. Like that is just like, it's just part of what they do, their work, and it's not held against them. So, and it's your money, yes.
There's a class at Loft about doing this. Would you recommend it?
Mhm.
I mean, I know you were there, but
Yeah.
really, would it be a really big help as,
Yeah.
unless like you sit down and talk to somebody, but would that be really investment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm assuming it's someone who's had good experience with receiving grants or is a grant writer or something like that. I would imagine it would be someone like that. There's some people who are so good at writing grants. And I read one yesterday, and I was trying so hard to find something to be critical about. Like, I was just like, okay, but here's this one little thing. But, her first draft, it did need a little bit of work, but then her final draft is like pretty airtight. So if it's someone like that who's teaching the class, they just kind of understand the tricks, like, I hate to call them tricks, but.
Well, but they are.
Yeah.
Well, any time you fill out those, any kind of
Yeah.
banks
Yeah.
and music.
Yeah.
I know.
And I always tell, I tell people with arts grants, you want this combination of head and heart coming together. Some people are just 100% head, and usually not literary artists, you know what I mean? In some of the other fields, I'm not gonna name them, but anyway,
Yeah, no, I
where they're
get it.
just head, and it's just like, they're talking up here, like, what the heck are they even, what? And then you want the reviewer to have an emotional connection, just like writing a cover letter, right? Like, there should be some sort of realizing that you're communicating to another human being and things like that. Some people just do that very, very naturally. So having someone read your application. And I don't know if this person is volunteering to look at those or.
Well, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I was actually.
If you inquire, like Jen Dodgson, Jennifer, is the Director of Education there. I would contact her and see if you can find out more information about what exactly is going to happen. Are they going to give you feedback, or are they going to give you highlights on how to write these proposals? And their bio should also be included, so maybe you'll see, oh, they received this grant, this,
You know, and I don't remember any of that. When I'm thinking about it now, I remember it was something about how to write them so that they're more apt to be accepted.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I should reread it.
I mean, I think that could be a really good thing, especially if you've never written it.
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
But
it could be a really good thing.
Actually,
Do you know who it is?
no, but I will.
Okay.
I can find out.
Okay.
I have a feeling I'm going to talk to you again.
Yeah.
But I have one other question.
Okay, yeah.
You know, beyond when I'm done here,
Mhm.
I do my reading next week and wherever I go after this.
Mhm.
And I am writing right now a novel. To find a mentor beyond now this,
Mhm.
where do I look? I mean, I could email Paige.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
There are a couple things I would think about. One, the Loft website. So there are a list of authors who are saying, please contact me, I would love to read your manuscript. And what's great about that is that you see exactly what they charge and all that sort of thing.
that was my next question.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time now, when we're this point in your writing, where I am now from then on, you pay the mentors for
Mhm.
when you're in.
Typically,
And okay, so what's normal? I mean, I don't know. Somebody could go, hey.
Yeah.
Yes.
It depends a lot on
Mhm.
the
Who they
project,
are.
what kind of revision you want. Are you looking for really deep critique, right? Or are you just looking for line editing? Right, a lot of them will have it listed by pages or words.
Mhm.
Here's how much.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just kind of pick
Yeah.
what you want them to do?
Yes, and what I would start with going to the Loft website, and then in that little search key, type manuscript critique.
Okay.
So this way you can see, you'll see a range based on, what they're going to do for you. And that will help you kind of get a gauge, like what would be appropriate for someone else who may not be on that website. So the other thing is that, in this town, there's so many wonderful writers, and if there's folks that you are interested in working with, you can try to reach out to them directly. And
You mean published people?
yeah,
Do they normally do that? Like,
there are some, many will do it, and they will say, okay, I charge $5,000, just so you know. I mean, some will say that,
yeah.
and some don't, depending on who they are, and, the more well-known they are, usually they charge most.
Is the Loft really the biggest, I know the biggest or the most known, place to look for that stuff? Whether it be them or branches
The other-
of where they,
You might also check Springboard for the Arts. But I think, because there are people who've done that, like, I really admire so-and-so, and so I'm going to reach out. I really admire Leslie Rima, for example. I don't know, I think one time she was listed on the Loft's website, and then she's not there, but she's still, I know she's still mentoring people. So, and now her schedule's getting very, very full, and she's
Yeah.
becoming, so.
get started. I actually
yeah.
started the Loft just because there's
Yeah,
such
it's a good, because
a presence.
all of us in town tend to be connected in some way or
Yeah.
another to the Loft, but I would say, even if there's a writer who's not listed there, but someone you admire and you think is writing, their writing resonates with you and your voice, there's something that you speak to each other, because I think it's hard when, working with someone where they're just you're just like this.
Yeah.
And they may be amazing, whatever, but they,
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be intimidating.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, a lot of people love Pat Weaver Francisco. Pat Weaver. I was figuring, is it Francisco first? is Weaver, yeah,
Yeah.
Weaver First Francisco. I had her too, but I always get it confused. Anyway, she's great for prose writers, and people usually leave her feeling, oh, encouraged. Yeah, yeah, and there are others. Fiction, Sheila O'Connor, I'm naming Hamlin people now, but Sheila's great at being able to read a piece and like very quickly identifying what the problems are. And
It's Sheila O'Connor, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's why.
yeah, and she may not be on the Lost website, but you can find her on the Hamlin website.
Oh,
And
okay.
send her an email.
Okay, thank you.
So we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
A question. Was there anyone else in your family that has the same type of writing gift?
Well, I would say I come from a very artistic family. And I was disappointed because they're all visual artists. And I am, I am not a visual artist, although I am not like the worst visual artist. Anyway, so I thought I was supposed to, I thought visual art was supposed to just come naturally. So thank God that teacher made us write a composition, because otherwise I wouldn't have known. But yes, my brother also, he's older than me, and he started writing before me, so he always takes credit from me being a writer. And I give that to him just because, why argue? You want to believe it? Anyway, it was really Miss Hirschman, but okay, I'll give you credit. So yeah, they're all pretty artistic in one way or another, but mostly through visual art.
One more question?
Yes.
The process from being, young and not writing, and being like a grown up and writing, having a career and degrees and books. There's a lot of downtime with waiting for rejection letters or waiting for acceptance letters, waiting on.
A lot of waiting.
A lot of waiting. How do you cope with all that waiting?
I just stay busy. I just, it's like, if I've got, waiting to hear back from 20 different places, I'm gonna give myself a little break. Like, okay, I don't need to submit any more work right now. But then I need to write. So as long as I'm staying in it, I don't feel like I'm waiting, if that makes sense. There was a time, like early on, I checked mailbox because, SASE, waiting for my envelope. So I would go hurry up to the mailbox, and that was just making me crazy. So I just like, after a while, especially with all the electronic submissions, it's easy to completely. So I say stay busy. Oh, you asked me about mistakes that people make, and this is what I would say for writing, for grants, everything, is not trying again when you hear no the first time or the 50th or whatever it was. Yeah, that's definitely part of the process. So yeah, I don't wait for answers. I just keep moving forward, and then it's like, then I get this like great little, ooh, I just got acceptance, yay, and people know about that acceptance. They don't know about the other 45 rejections.
Yeah.
So, but in order to get that one, you kind of have to,
All right, thank you. Let's give Sherrie a
Thank you.